Welcome back to the No Space. I'm Joel Vasquez, and we're going to continue with a whole new mind. And today we're going to talk about design. Why should inventors focus on design? Design is one of the 6 high-touch concepts that Pink thinks are going to be skills that are going to be valuable in the future. In order to change the mental model and change how things work and invent new products, I think we're going to have to look at things from as many different angles as possible. The design of an object to me is just another factor that can lead us to new conceptual ideas and new inventive solutions. Pink's central claim about design is that design will matter more and more as society of abundance continues to grow. It will not be enough to create something new that works well. You need to make it stand out from the competition. So in order to do that, you need to focus not only on how something functions, but on how something looks and how it makes you feel. From an inventor standpoint, I've learned that design isn't just about functionality and aesthetics, but how those two things connect to each other and how they relate to each other and how they force and challenge each other in order to change the status quo. When designers think about design, they ask themselves basic questions like, why does it look and feel this way, and how does that relate to its function, and how the whole thing comes together and how it works. When inventors think about designing an object, they're not looking just about the way something looks and feels, but how it's related to what it functions, yes, but also how to go beyond that functionality. If you want to change the way it looks, you have to also change the way it functions, and vice versa. If you want to change the way it functions, you have to change the way it looks and feels. Design and functionality kind of work together, and they could be seen as advantages or limitations depending on how you look at it. But engineers live in this kind of reality all the time. Engineers are always plagued by limitations of physical reality. So they want to build something, but through the laws of physics, it will lead in catastrophe. So they have to kind of rethink what the conceptual model is, and they have to rethink how to engineer something totally different, which, by that brainstorming and rethinking leads them to new functional ideas and therefore success in their construction. Designers also have to contend with this. They deal with limitations on how something looks. They want something to look in a specific way that will elicit a response from the public. Emotionally, limitations for inventors are something that just forces them to rethink in a completely different way. And that rethinking and brainstorming also leads to new functional ideas. All three are just trying to get to the same goal, a new conceptual model or a new idea. And all three of them deal with limitations and advantages, and they all have to rethink and brainstorm their ideas. But, they come from a very different viewpoint, and they have very different goals. Engineers try to iterate and make things better, things that are already designed and things that are already built, inventions that have already been built. They try to iterate those things and make them 1% better. Designers try to make the aesthetics look completely different, so they just redesign their product. But inventors, they have new conceptual ideas. They try to reconceptualize the entire thing, scrapping the idea and then bringing something new to the table that goes beyond that mental model. There are so many examples of different designs changing the way something functions. One of the things that comes to mind is old model AC window units. The typical design and the way it looks is just a box, right? And a box that sticks out from the window. And obviously there are limitations with that. You can't close the window entirely, so you have to construct flaps on the sides of the box structure to not let air flow in and out of the house. Other companies have gone around that, and they've made this kind of U-shaped, horseshoe-shaped window unit that allows you to close the window almost entirely. If we get rid of the boxed unit, if we move away from that design, we can real quickly start to see different ways of creating the same product in different geometric shapes that allows us to basically go beyond the limitations of what that box structure had in the first place. There are so many examples like gas stations versus EV charging stations. The design of the model for a gas station is that there's a hub outside of your home separated from wherever it is that you park your car, and that you go to the station and you fuel up, and then that gives you however many more miles or a time until you have to fuel up again. So that's the gas station model, but the EV charging hub is just a completely different infrastructure design, and wherever you go, there will be a charging station. Eventually, you will just go home and there'll be a charging station. You'll park your car at a restaurant and there'll be a charging station. So there won't be any stations per se. It'll just be everywhere, and essentially, like, we have, if you think about your phone, like, you don't necessarily have a station for your phone. You can just plug to anywhere where there's an outlet. So that's kind of like the design of how we plug in our phones and charge our phones will be shifted to how we plug in our vehicles and charge our vehicles. Essentially, anywhere you look, you can have a completely different design infrastructure, or just aesthetically a different design. The point is thinking about how things look and how things feel will force you to struggle with the limitations of that product and uncover those limitations and lead you into new territory. And that's the goal of an inventor, is to get yourself into new territory and kind of struggle and fight within that territory to create something new. So if you make a different design, it leads to different constraints, and that leads to different thinking strategies and different ways of looking at a different perspective, and then hopefully that will lead to a different invention. This is kind of a weird thing to say, but you want, as an inventor, I think you want to search out and find bad design, because to me, a bad design equals an invention opportunity nearby. But yeah, design should be seen as this kind of force, and just how, like, engineers are forced by nature to do things a certain way. Designers are forced by aesthetics to do things a certain way. Inventors are forced by both, really, to do things a certain way, and design plays into all that. So yeah, design should be seen as this kind of force that influences inventors to find new solutions based on how something looks or something feels. It does help me rethink my assumptions and as to why something looks a certain way and the purpose behind why it looks that way. But the goal of design is to still, for an inventor, is to challenge the mental model, suggesting that how something looks and feels are clues to how things are made a certain way and how they can be made differently. Now, with each of the high-touch concepts that Pink talks about, he at the end of those chapters, he has a kind of portfolio. It's actionable steps that you could take to basically nurture that high-touch concept or high-touch ability, and to promote it and grow it. And since I'm one of those people that likes to think a lot and doesn't really take action as much as I should, I started making this kind of like algorithm, or basically just this list of things that I should do that will help me develop more of an inventive mindset. In relation to design, one of the actionable habits that I have is to start a design notebook. Just make notes of great design, bad design. Just make notes, anything about how something looks and how something feels and what it elicits from me emotionally. It could be really anything, interiors, exteriors, like architecture of a certain building, or the way a city's made, or the design process of how you shop or how you go to the doctor, or it could just be really anything, but just focus not on its functionality, but like how something looks and feels. Having a design notebook is great because I already have an illustrated journal, and I could just add that factor, that perspective to the illustrated journal. But Pink also suggests this process of putting it on the table, which is just you clear the table, you take an object and you place it in the middle of the table, and then you just kind of look at it for as long as you want and ask really basic questions about it. For example, if I change how something looks, will it lead to something entirely new? So you're just basically asking thousands of questions about the material that it's made out of, asking questions about what it does to your senses, but you're just looking at it, you're being more mindful of that product, and you're trying to see it as if you've never seen it before. Please leave any comments about what you think of the design process and its relation to inventing in general, or creating new products and engineering as well. And with that said, thank you for watching.